let's get this thing kicked off. So thanks for stopping in. I appreciate it. My name's Stuart Oliver. So I run what's called the Fuel by SolidFire program here at SolidFire. And what that really means is I help service providers around the world figure out how to productize Flash, how to take it to market, how to make margin on it, and how to really package it up and take it out to their customers. So this presentation is really focused around the business discussion around Flash and how service providers can take it to market. First of all, because I know we have some people who don't know who SolidFire is really, is anyone here familiar with SolidFire, what we do, how we do it? So SolidFire is a 5-year-old company. We're an all-flash array designed specifically for large-scale infrastructure. Okay, we're a scale-out flash storage designed for large-scale infrastructure. And we have a lot of cool technologies that help us do that, and I'll try to touch on those as I go through this presentation. I'm going to keep you for about 8 minutes. Okay, so we'll make it nice and short, and that way you guys get into the draw and we can do our thing. So it's titled Scale-Out Flash for Scale-Out Flash, the service provider's ATM. And then what that means is really how do service providers take Flash to market and profit from it. But I think before we can discuss really how SolidFire can help service providers running VMware sort of build their own ATM, we need to understand what's going on in the market. Most service providers have traditionally had problems with storage. Whether it's a noisy neighbor effect, everyone knows what the noisy neighbor is, when one virtual machine or instance takes all the performance out of the array from all the rest in the system. Whether it's the ability to pull out predictable performance, or it's really the cost, right? The ongoing cost of storage. What makes service providers different to enterprises is that an enterprise typically knows what they're going to buy. They know they need X amount of terabytes, and they may know how much performance they need. With a service provider, however, they always are looking at scale, right? They have to buy storage that they are reselling to their customers, hopefully for a profit. So understanding what the problems that service providers have in today's market is the first step. So let's make a quick note here. This is a whiteboard discussion, so I should write on it. So anyone know some of the problems that service providers have from a business perspective? I do. I have some written down right here. So how do I monetize my storage? How do I make money with it? How do I buy it? How do I price it? How do I position it? How do I actually take it to market? The second most important one is how do I get more customers, right? As a service provider, you're going to see new customers coming on board and old ones that maybe churn off and move somewhere else. The third option is how do I reduce risk? Right? Where's the risk as a service provider? You're buying a lot of very large storage that you're having to sell and deploy over many years. The challenge with that is what if the storage changes after a year and a half? Right? You've bought an architecture and you built it into your systems and now it changes. That's risk. You also have to think about 2 to 3 years down the road, and you have two hopes. One, when you buy a controller-based storage architecture, you hope that you don't need more, but you hope that you fill it up just enough so that it's the perfect point of revenue and cash outlay. And the fourth one is really how do I streamline operations? As a service provider, I have to balance the fact that I want to deliver excellent support to my customers, but at the same time, I also have to scale my revenue while keeping my operational costs as flat as possible. Okay? So let's take a look at the numbers. So we know that the cloud is growing 6 times faster than traditional enterprise IT. But what analysts don't tell you is, why is it growing 6x faster? What are the applications that are driving that growth as a service provider, and how do I need to build my infrastructure to support that? The second statistic is 32%. Only 32% of applications were designed for or written for true multi-tenancy and web hosting. So what that says to me is, where are the other 68%? So if I'm a service provider, if I know where the other 68% is, this starts helping me figure out the discussions around what infrastructure I build, how I deploy it, what kind of customers I go after. Here's an interesting statistic, and it seems pretty basic. 89% of enterprises are using Flash, and that's not a fantastic statistic. But if you turn the lens slightly and you put the service provider spin onto it, how does that affect me if I'm building a large-scale service provider infrastructure? Well, the typical enterprise that goes to a hosting provider or cloud provider or whatever you want to call it, managed hosting provider, they only know the system state of their current application. I want to move this to the cloud. Well, I'm running 32 gig of RAM, I've got 8 CPU, and I've got a terabyte of storage. They approach the service provider and say, this is what I want. And two things happen. The service provider says, yes, we're running SolidFire. They deploy that application for the customer. Or two, what ends up happening is a lot of service providers that are not currently running Flash start to figure out, how do I push this together? How do I cobble together a solution that can really address that customer need? So while the statistic seems light, from a service provider perspective, it's really important to understand how to deploy and how to get it into your environment profitably. So let's take a look at the market. This is where I'm going to get creative. Okay. See, that's a 3. I'm not an artist. So what the vertical axis here is dollar per gig per month. So if I'm buying storage if I'm a service provider and I'm selling my storage, what does that look like? This is IOPS, okay? For those who don't know, IOPS is a measure of performance in a storage array. So if I start at 100 and 10,000, if I look at some of the most common service providers in the market, some of the managed hosters that you know, think of companies like Rackspace, Software, Hosting.com, and you insert a whole bunch of other customers in there. If you take a look and map out where they fit, let's just call this 50 cents a gig per month, call this 20. You see down on the bottom left, this is where you see Azure, this is where you see AWS, this is where you see Google, and it's storage, right? That's not where they're making their money. If you start to add some of these managed service providers, 80 cents, you gotta, if you want to see the names behind these, I actually have a chart with the real names on it. Just for time's sake, I can't really draw it up here. But you start to see this grouping of where people are positioning, service providers are positioning their offering in the market today. So there's a couple of things that come out of this. One, if we know that only 32% of applications are designed to run in a hosted environment, what does this tell you? This is the 32%. Right? So if I'm a service provider and I look at everything that these guys offer in here today, if you take the top 10 or 20 service providers, managed hosting providers in the world, and you take their logos off their website and you look at the services they offer, what do they offer? Monitoring, patching, replication, DR, storage as a service, bing, 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 all these different kinds of services. And what ends up happening, the guys in this quadrant here running legacy controller-based storage, they end up competing on price, right? So my 40 gig or 50 gig per month storage now turns into 20 or 10, and now storage becomes storage. It's not something I can make money on, it's not sexy. So what ends up happening is, where's that other 68% of those applications that are sitting behind the enterprise firewall? Well, they're out over here, right? This is VDI. This is NoSQL, right? These are the applications that require a lot of performance to run comfortably. An enterprise IT guy is never going to put this into this environment, right? He knows he can't get the performance, once bitten, twice shy. So the reason that those 68% of enterprise applications are still sitting behind the firewall is because they can't get the predictable performance, the performance in general that Flash offers. So as a service provider, if you're going after what's my next line of business, what do I deploy next, what do I consider for my next type of infrastructure, it's got to be SSD. You've got to be able to deliver some sort of scale-out Flash to support the performance and storage needs for your customers. And this is where it is. So what you start to see now is you start to see SolidFire customers deploying like this in different tiers. Well, if I've got a customer that wants to run VDI and I've trained my support techs to run VDI, here's what I can offer. Okay, so there's different ways you can start to see this, and I would encourage afterwards, if you have more questions on how these tiers are sitting, I can actually show you on a presentation. But this is enabled by scale-out Flash, the ability to scale both performance and capacity at the same time. What this does is, we're starting to bring this into a close here, this ties into the 4 challenges that service providers have. How do I monetize my storage? Making money? You're not making money down here, right? But if I'm delivering 60 cents a gig for a specific set of IOPS, maybe this is 2,000, and I can guarantee that level of performance for my customers, right? Obviously SolidFire, we can do quality of service to every LUN or volume in that system. So think about it, it's literally, we can actually configure the performance profile of dedicated equipment in a shared infrastructure. So if you're a service provider, that's key for you because you can deliver the value proposition to that enterprise customer to attract that 68%. How do I get more customers? Simple. Go after the 68%, figure out what they're doing, why they want to buy it, and create a roadmap for how to build those kinds of applications. How do I reduce my risk? Legacy storage, as I mentioned at the beginning, you sort of plan 2 to 3 to 4 years in advance. With SolidFire Scale Out, it's scale out. You buy a little bit at a time. What you're doing is you're bringing your revenue and your risk lines closer together, right? So if in 2 years the world's most incredible storage technology comes out, you're not stuck on a 3-year plan. You can change course very quickly. And finally, streamline operations. Obviously, SolidFire's API, rich API that can control every function in the array, allows service providers to do more integration, reduce their operational costs. ESG did a study recently. SolidFire helps integrated service providers, I should say, drop their costs by 67%. That's not reducing heads. It's really refocusing what they're doing and using automation to deliver those services. So I'm going to bring it to a close. So thank you for stopping by. Hopefully this gave you just a very brief insight as to how SolidFire Scale Out Flash can help you do differentiating services in the market. And if you'd like to know more about the math behind deploying SolidFire in a service provider, stop by afterwards and I'll gladly give you that kind of information. So thank you very much for stopping by.